Okay, I'll call June 11th Committee of the Whole meeting to order. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge the town of Edson is located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional ancestor land of the Nikawa, Saulteaux, Siskasay, Penny, Kainai, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and Métis nations. We honor and acknowledge the lands, the elders, the youth in which we gather, and our ancestors who have gathered here for centuries. Okay, with that said, I'm looking for an adoption of the agenda. Let's see. Okay, let's see if I can get you there, Councilor Moore. It's not come. Oh, wait, try this. Ooh.
Just push it down here, it should automatically activate.
No, it isn't.
Here, try this. I'll do it.
No, he's not coming up.
There he is. There he is.
Okay, Councilor Moore.
I so move.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, thanks, carried. Okay, adoption of the previous minutes from May 28, 2024. Oh, wait a minute, I got you here. Councillor Chechka.
You got activator, Mike.
Well, we're trying this.
There you go.
There, it's working.
I move that the minutes of the May 28th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, there's no C. And moving on, we have a delegation. Mr. Mercer is going to be live streaming in.
You can come on in, Lockyer.
Can we do what? There we go. Good evening, Mr. Mercer. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I believe he has a 5 minutes, is that right? You're going to live stream it. Understand you have a delegation for council, so please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to thank the Honorable Mayor, councillors, and administration for the time and the opportunity to bring forward this presentation this evening. I am speaking as the delegate for 3 families, including my own, that recently lost our primary dwellings as well as our personal belongings and property due to a fire. In the early morning hours of April 20th, 2024, a devastating fire broke out at the home of Tennille and Jonathan Tribble, located at 6118 11th Avenue, and quickly spread to my home, which is a duplex at 6122 11th Avenue, as well as the adjoining home of Ryan DeRoche at 6128 11th Avenue. Unfortunately, the fire consumed and destroyed everything in Jonathan and Tennille's home, leaving them with nothing more than the clothes on their backs. My house, the next home to catch fire, was extremely damaged from flames, smoke, and water. So we also lost most everything inside the home, aside from our contents in the garage, which was spared from the fire and water damage. The adjoining neighbor's house belonging to Ryan DeRoche was extensively damaged from the fire as well, mostly on the top floor due to smoke and flames, but extremely water damaged on all floors. The aftermath bears witness to how quickly our lives can change, and I'm thankful that we didn't lose anyone in this horrific event. I am sorry to say that Tennille and Jonathan did lose some pets in the fire, and my heart goes out to them for their loss. Pets are family members too, and I couldn't imagine the sadness they must be experiencing losing a cherished pet. The past 7 weeks have been nothing short of a nightmare for all 3 of our families. Losing your home in such a horrible event takes a toll on your life. It affects you and the family's mental health, your finances, and your day-to-day life. Excuse me. Where are you going to live? Where do you store the things that you managed to save from the ashes? And how are we going to afford to purchase new clothes, shoes, food, and stay up to date with your daily and monthly bills? Here's an interesting fact. Your mortgage payment is still due every month, even if you have no house. Many insurance companies apparently don't pay for that. Try paying for a mortgage and renting another property to live in while your house is under construction and keep your head above water. It isn't possible with today's high cost of living. Although all three homeowners have insurance to cover most costs, insurance companies have set limits they pay out and are not the most compassionate group when it comes to getting your life back together. We pay our monthly premiums on time, but when it comes time to file a claim, the clock seems to slow down for insurance companies. Our insurance adjusters tell us that we could be out of our homes for up to 18 months. At the rate we are seeing progress with demolition and rebuilding these past 7 weeks, we expect it may even be longer. The financial strain will be overwhelming over the time frame, not to mention the mental anguish that comes with knowing you're living unsettled under a strange roof. As delegate for the affected homeowners, I kindly request that the town of Edson waive our property taxes until we can safely return to and reside in our properties. The fire has left us without shelter and an inability to use our property, which is the reason for our plea today. We understand that the town council has the discretion to consider such request under exceptional circumstances, and we think that this situation is one of those circumstances. If council requires any additional information or documentation, please do not hesitate to contact us. We appreciate your understanding and compassion during this challenging time. In conclusion, I'd first like to thank the brave first responders from the town of Edson Fire Station, the RCMP, as well as the Yellowhead County Fire Department. Without these resources, the situation we witnessed could have been much worse for many more homeowners. These people have difficult jobs to do, and it is important that we continue to fund and support both fire departments. I'd like to also thank the mayor and the council on behalf of Jonathan, Tennille, Brian, and myself for your consideration on this matter. We understand that this request will not be answered today by council or administration, but we are eager to hear from you after council has had sufficient time to review our request. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mercer. Sorry for all you guys lost. We do understand your stress. You're right, we won't get an answer, but we'll direct administration. We can bring this back to our next council meeting. Is that correct? Okay, so we're bringing it to our next council meeting, so we will have an answer. And I believe if you have questions, you could reach out to administration, but thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll open it up to council if they want any clarification questions. I think we already lost him. Oh, you're still there. Any council have any clarification? Councillor Chechka, let's see if we can get you up. There we go. She's flashing green. There we go.
Okay. Through the chair to Mr. Mercer, thanks for bringing this forward to us, and I'm certainly empathetic for your losses and hope that it becomes a little bit easier for you guys as the days go on. I'm just looking for a question for clarity when administration brings this back, and I'm going to assume this, but I don't want to assume, that the property taxes you're asking to be waived are for the ones that would be normally due at the end of June? Those that received their notice?
Well, at this point in time, we don't know if we don't know if it's going to be 18 months, so 1 year might not be sufficient, but we're asking right now that if anything can be considered, the whole time frame while we're out of our homes would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other clarification questions from council? Nope. Okay, thank you, sir. And
Thank you.
we look forward to giving you an answer.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is E, Executive Office, and I believe it would be Clayton, but he's on holiday. Oh, sorry. Amanda's bringing this one forward. What's on here? Why is this different than this? Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Amanda, Executive Corporate.
I'm just waiting for the click share to click in here. There we go. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor and Committee. Today I am presenting the proposed draft meeting procedures bylaw. With this being a larger bylaw, would committee prefer I pause for questions after each slide, or would you prefer I run through the presentations prior to questions?
I guess we'll leave it up to the council members. If they do, they can hit the button, so.
Sounds
Depends
good?
how long the slide is.
The current council procedural bylaw was developed in 2019 and has proven over time to have some challenges, including lacking clarity, procedural requirements, and provisions for electronic and hybrid meetings. Administration has developed a new council procedural bylaw to address these challenges and provide provisions to support council in holding successful and meaningful meetings. In preparation of writing this bylaw, we completed a significant amount of research, including a workshop with legal counsel and municipality comparisons with the City of Edmonton, City of Fort Saskatchewan, City of Spruce Grove, Town of Stony Plain, and Red Deer County. These cities and towns were chosen to ensure we captured a diverse range of municipal sizes and best practices in a variety of settings. We also looked at the date of their bylaws to ensure we used recent comparables, if they addressed electronic meetings, and if they had undergone a legal review. The current meeting procedure bylaw contains a number of current and well-suited provisions, which allowed us to use it as a foundation for this rewrite. The first 4 slides reference sections that exist in the current bylaw and have been updated to reflect clear language and provide clarity. These 3 parts were updated using plain language and provided clarity. So part 2, definitions, was expanded on to include a definition for electronic means, which is defined as having the meaning given to it in the act, and for the purposes of this bylaw refers specifically to any video conferencing or telephone conferencing platform that generally allows for the broadcasting of audio and or video to other meeting participants. Part 3, application interpretation. The scope of this section was expanded to apply to committees that council chooses to establish. Unless otherwise noted in this bylaw, this now allows for an acting mayor to be appointed in the event the mayor and deputy mayor are unavailable, and also provides flexibility by allowing for the waiving of procedural requirements with a 2/3 vote. And part 6, organizational meetings, has been clarified to confirm the chief administrative officer may establish the time, date, and place of the organizational meeting, which is our current practice. Part 7, regular meetings, was expanded to include a caveat that regular meetings will not be held between nomination day and the organizational meeting in an election year. This has become common practice among many municipalities and allows those running in the election to focus on their campaign. Parts 8 and 9, Committee of the Whole and special meetings, were expanded to provide clarity on the methods to be used to provide notifications and the process to schedule one of these types of meetings. Part 12, public hearings, was expanded on to provide clarity on the methods to be used to provide notifications, the process to schedule a public hearing, as well as set clear submission guidelines for public hearings. I would like to take a moment to note that there was an error in the uploaded proposed bylaw. Part 12.3 will be reworked to match the language in 12.4E with the new written submission deadline of 12 p.m. the business day prior to the public hearing. This allows the Legislative and Corporate Initiatives Coordinator adequate time to prepare and circulate these submissions to Council. Written submissions will not be accepted after this deadline and will not be read during the hearing, as Council will already have them. However, public speakers will continue to have the ability to register to speak up to the start of the meeting, as well as have an option to speak as a walk-on during the meeting. And part 15, quorum, has been expanded to clarify the loss of quorum from a councillor abstaining from voting on a specific item, which will not require the remainder of the agenda to be postponed to the next council meeting, and added a requirement that members provide a minimum of 24 hours notice for an absence to assist with meeting planning when possible. Part 16, role and responsibility of the chair, has been simplified to provide clarity on the process to select an alternate chair when the mayor and deputy mayor are both unavailable. This section also now allows the chair to have attendees removed if meeting etiquette rules are not being followed, and clarifies that the chair can adjourn the meeting upon completion without needing a motion. And Part 17, meeting conduct, the wording has been simplified for clarification and to align with the Council Code of Conduct bylaw. Part 20, motions, has been expanded to clarify that the agenda will be introduced by the chair, then presented to council. Council will then have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions. Once this is complete, a motion will be made, followed by voting. This section also now clarifies the different types of motions and the process to make them. This section references a motion to adjourn the meeting, which specifically refers to a situation that may occur that requires the meeting to adjourn prior to the completion of the agenda, such as an unexpected loss of quorum. That this would be a situation that would result in using a resolution to adjourn, and the remaining agenda items would be deferred to the next scheduled meeting. As was previously noted in Part 16, a motion will no longer be required to adjourn the meeting when it comes to its natural end. Part 21, voting, has been expanded to officially allow for the use of an electronic voting system, as well as clarifies the voting procedures. Part 22, bylaws, now provides additional details to clarify the process to pass and amend bylaws. It also now allows for digital signatures and incorporates language to align with the MGA. Part 24, meeting minutes, has been expanded to allow additional details on what must be included in meeting minutes and allow for digital signatures, which will expedite the signing process. This next section will focus on items that have been added to meet the MGA requirements. So Part 4, place of municipal office. This has been added to align with Section 204 of the Municipal Government Act, which states that council must name a municipal office. And Part 11, participation by electronic means, has been added to meet requirements under Section 199 of the MGA, which allows for remote and hybrid meetings. This section does clarify that this only applies to council and committee of the whole meetings, not council committees. If council committees wish to add a provision for electronic meetings, they may do so through a resolution during their committee meetings. The following three sections have been added or undergone substantive changes to clarify process, expectations, and reflect best practices. So Part 5, appointment and duties of the Legislative and Corporate Initiatives Coordinator, has been added to create the formal designation of the Legislative and Corporate Initiatives Coordinator role. This role will perform all duties as assigned by the town, as well as perform all functions that are or may in the future be identified in the MGA. This role will be appointed by and report to the Chief Administrative Officer. Part 10, meeting notices, has been added to clarify the methods to provide notice, as well as what notices must include. The bylaw mandates notices will include the date, time, and location of the meetings, whether public are permitted to attend in person, by electronic means, or both, and if electronic attendance is allowed. The notice will also state which method will be used to access the meeting, how to make a submission for the meeting if appropriate, and a contact method for town staff should there be any questions. And Part 19, notice of motion, has undergone a complete rewrite to provide clarity for the process of putting forward a notice of motion, the intent of a notice of motion, as well as when and how to use them. To allow for a smooth process of placing a notice of motion, administration will be revamping the agenda template to include a section for notices of motion. Council held their strategic planning session on May 3rd, 2024. This session included a workshop with legal counsel to discuss some important sections of our bylaw. Delegations and participation by electronic means were among these items. As noted on slide 8, Section 199 of the MGA now allows each municipality to have a provision to allow for remote and hybrid meetings. This addition will apply to town council meetings and committee of the whole meetings. Implementing this virtual element allows for flexibility and ensures our meetings are easily accessible for members of council, administration, external presenters, as well as the general public. The delegation section was expanded to set a 5-minute time limitation on delegation presentations. It also grants the Chief Administrative Officer authority to allow multiple delegations at a meeting and clarifies the process that council will not provide a decision on a matter at the meeting. There is, however, flexibility for exceptions on this in the event a decision needs to be made urgently. I would also like to clarify the difference between a delegation and a council presentation. Historically, we've had all members of the public, including public presenters, present as a delegation. The purpose of a delegation is to allow members of the public to come and ask for council support on a specific item. A public presentation is an opportunity for charities such as STARS or a committee to present an update to council. To be more in alignment with this model, administration will be rolling out the new agenda template that allows for a specific agenda slot for delegations with the 5-minute time limitation and a separate agenda slot for public presentations. This process will allow our meetings to progress through the agenda in a more efficient manner and be in line with best practices. So our next steps in the process is to hear some feedback from committee. And along with that feedback, this bylaw will then be forwarded for a full legal review and be brought back at a future council meeting for consideration. Are there any questions?
Did we skip through all the slides, or that was good? Okay, I'll open it to, thank you, Amanda. I'll open it to council for questions, please. Okay, so we can get you up here. Doesn't like yours, not. Oh, here we go. I'll find you over here.
It's on.
Good, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor to Ms. Beerboom. A couple things I wanted to talk about was at our strategic planning, we had discussions, a couple of items we talked about there were our, on the delegation side. Now you said 5 minutes, and their recommendation was less than 5 minutes for delegation. So is 5 minutes too long? Because if I remember correctly from the discussions with Brown Lee was a delegation is somebody who quickly comes in and says, thank you for, our hockey team, and then they're out. Where presentations are longer and get more than the 5 minutes. So I guess my question is, she said her recommendation at that time was that it should be maybe down to like 3 minutes as lots, or even maybe 5 is the right number. It's just if we had 4 delegations. And then on the agenda side for setting these agendas up, like for the longest time we had items, and I see like we've had light items on our agendas that I've in all the 15 plus years I've been on council, I've never seen items with there. So does this new procedure bylaw clean some of that stuff up?
Yes, through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Besichny, we do plan to clean up the agenda template to allow for a more streamlined process.
Okay, and then there was a third item that she had talked about was the, what did she say? It's the questions in media and public comments. Her recommendation was that the very few, if any, councils have that item left anymore. So is that addressed in there as well? Because when I went through it, I didn't see that, but I wasn't sure if it was still in the draft or not.
I don't see a light on. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you. Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Precision. Sorry, I'll do my best to. So with regards to the agenda, that is a good question. We did talk about what items were needed in order for council to have an effective and efficient meeting. Essentially, with regards to that particular section, there is some information that we were provided within this meeting procedure bylaw, because the agenda isn't attached as an approved document. It's a template that has been created over time that wasn't necessarily brought back. That's not to say that there isn't an opportunity, most likely, and we can bring that back to council for your review at the next meeting as well, when we bring back the bylaw for your, to take a look as far as there's many items that have been, we were recommended to remove, and that was one that we wanted to take a look at. And the basic reason with regards to that is essentially allowing for other opportunities for council to be engaging on items before they come to council, and that was definitely a discussion, but we'd be happy to bring that back for you for more consideration.
Yep, hang on, we can find him. Oh,
Yep.
Through
Councillor
the
Taylor.
Deputy Mayor to administration, thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's good that we review this bylaw to bring us up to date to things, and I'll jump in terms of where Councillor Position sort of left off with regards to questions from the media and public. And CO Beveridge, you kind of touched on this. If that is not something that most municipalities go through, how, and I guess my challenge is in terms of members of the public, when it comes time to ask questions, the decision has already been made. That's the challenge, right? And some of the questions are good, sometimes just good questions, clarification questions. And I'm not sold that that's something that needs to happen at the council table. I think they're good questions to ask. They just may not need to be asked at the council table. They can be asked, well, at any time, really. Like, just, you could phone any one of us and email any one of us to ask those kind of clarifying questions. The bigger thing is input. And it's hard to give input after the decision's been made. So in terms of giving input, is that kind of where you were going with the, I guess, public participation and the public participation policy that we have, in terms of providing input before the decision is made, before it even gets to the council table? Is that where you're going with that?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the, I guess, additional, asking for additional information. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I think from our perspective, working through some of these policies that we have in place. So the public participation policy is a requirement as per the MGA to have. And I would suspect that over time, during the period of time where we didn't have public opportunities to meet with our public, I would say, and this is where I'm always very, apparent and I guess and honest about where we think we can do better. When it comes to meaningful input with residents, the public participation guides us very strongly, actually, with regards to what meaningful input is and when it can be used and why it should be used. One of the things we've been struggling, with, our resources and we've just added council, added the communications advisor as well on top of supporting our current coordinator. That does help support, and I think that's been part of our issue, is that we're often very reactive in our communication, and understanding where council has directed us with this regards to the strategic plan, and where actually ultimately administration wants to also go with communication back and forth and providing that input into our decisions or recommendations that we're actually providing. So I think that's a very good point, and I think that's something we can do better at. And I think we're actually probably well positioned to ensure that we are, including with our requests for decisions, what is that public input going to look like well in advance on our projects, on our big items that you really want to make sure that you go out as a council and get that input. Yes, there's the informal ways with regards to phone calls, emails, etc., but there's also opportunities to get out and meet people where they are. So that's something.
Yes, go ahead, follow up.
And through the chair, I spin off of that, and that's kind of where we spoke about at strategic planning, and I'm excited to start that portion of it. When we joined council, we were in the middle of COVID. I think COVID stifled so much of that public participation idea, and unfortunately, I think council we got into a bad groove of maybe not actively setting up events or setting up scenarios where we can get out and get input from the community. And I think doing that is what people more want than to just ask. And of course, within those events, there's time to ask questions. When we bring questions into the council meeting, and this is where legal came into play, and something to think about is that we have this weird job where people watch us do this job. They get to watch the council meetings. But if you look at many other municipalities, they don't allow those questions at the end. Number one, their council meetings last like 8 hours. So it becomes a real challenge to do that. So they don't offer that because it's a council meeting, not a council meeting with questions from the public. So so long as we're adding that other caveat into that public participation idea, I think I think that's kind of the road to set our meetings forward, I think is a stronger fit. So those are my comments just on that.
Okay, Councillor Pisichny, if we can get you on here, hang on.
It's on.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor. Further to that, part of that, the strategic planning was exactly that discussion of having that public input piece ahead of time. And this has happened at our council, and the questions at the end is at the end, and to me, it's irrelevant because everything is decided, as Councillor Taylor alluded to. But we had decisions where people in the public, and just not that long ago, it says you didn't ask us. Well, we didn't put it out there for it to be asked. And we have things brought to our council at the last minute, and we're left here as a council. We didn't get to debate it or talk about it, and we're in the decision-making stage. So having that public input ahead of time, I think, is great. So have the committee of the whole meeting, and then we discuss it and build on it, and the administration creates them. Then we put it out there what we're looking at. Have that public input piece so that we get it ahead of time, right? So then the people in the public can call us and say, hey, I disagree with council's opinion, and council can take that into consideration when they come to the meeting. And having the things at the end is just, it becomes into that challenging what you just went through. Well, that decision's already made. So I think having that public input piece and doing a better job of getting that out there. And that's why if I from the strategic planning, we're looking at adding the extra positions of communications to get that out there so we can have those meaningful discussions ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pisichny. Councillor Moore.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on, you're not red.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to know if we scratch out the question period and all that, does that exclude the media as well? I just wanted to know that. I asked that because for 34 years I worked for the Edson Leader, and I think I turned up to pretty much every meeting here. And yeah, I think that's pretty important, at the end of the meeting for media to be afforded the chance to ask questions. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up in my mind.
Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Moore. In the information that with regards to specific about the media, that is the most uncommon experience that was found. The media can access us at any time, pre-meeting, post-meeting. The agendas go out on Friday. They have the opportunity, and in most other organizations that I've worked with, the media is in touch with you as soon as that agenda comes out. And the expectation is that there's a good relationship with the media and administration providing input or clarification oftentimes on those items. So that was this is a very big anomaly having media questions.
Okay, thank you. Now we're trying to get Councillor Taylor up. Oh, hang on.
It's up.
Okay.
Through the deputy mayor to Councillor Moore, having the privilege of sitting in multiple different chairs at this table, and I guess I'd be the longest serving person on this council. I think, and you can probably attest to this because you've probably called me more times than you ever asked questions when you were in the gallery. So the media generally calls the next day after they had time to digest it to figure out what the questions they wanted to ask. So I don't, for years you never had media, even the media that didn't call in. Even here now, we don't even have any media online. So they generally follow up after they review and watch the cameras. So, and I believe today the media has changed. Today they watch the video the next day when they're at work. They're not sitting at home on a Tuesday night watching Council Times, For those who are watching, thank you, but I don't think they're sitting here waiting and eager for that.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny, and you owe them people popcorn. So, Councillor Taylor, you're up if I can get you here.
Yeah, through the chair to on this, ditto for what Councillor Pisichny says to Councillor Moore. And the media is totally able to call us the next day, as members of the public are. And in fact, we encourage that. We want that. We do. But there's, of course, a time and place for it. And again, if you look at other municipalities, they don't do it. So I'd like to, of course, change gears and to talk about Section 11 of the bylaw, and that's participation by electronic means. This is something that is allowed in the MGA. I struggle with this one. I struggle with it maybe on a couple of things. And a member sort of zooming in, and the reason why a member might zoom in. And this is where a discussion element can come into play here. The first things first, if a member is ill and cannot be at the meeting, but maybe could participate from home, there's an allowance for that. If the member is away on council business and perhaps has a meeting at 8 a.m. On Wednesday morning in Calgary, well, we're not asking them to certainly leave the Tuesday night and drive to Calgary. So, zooming in there or being a part electronically is fine. However, if you take a new job that suddenly you're saying, well, now I work in Fort McMurray for 5 out of 6 weeks, so I'll never be at a council meeting, but I'll always participate by Zoom. I struggle with that a little bit as to allowing that. Because I think, as an elected member, you need to be sitting at this table as much as possible. I understand there are situations where maybe we allow for, I say, illness or away on council business, but if, perhaps away on personal time or perhaps other business time, I'm not sure if that's something, I think we need to clarify that. And the other issue I have is when we go into closed session. And yes, we can set up the means to set someone to closed session. And I'm not calling anyone to say that anyone would be disrespectful in this mindset, but how do we know that they're alone in the space that they're in, zooming in? Right? When we go in a closed session, it is just the members that are supposed to be here and the administration members that are staying. But we don't know who else is in that room, where they are, who might be listening, those types of things. And there could be serious violations that happen there. So I struggle with that. Even there's section 11.3b is, they could come in by telephone. And I'm really struggling with coming in by telephone. I think we need to see you. I think that's again, like, especially if we go into closed session, I think we need to know who's there. So I bring up those concerns with the electronic presentation. I like it again for if you're ill or if you're away on council business, but other than that, I think you need to be here. So those are my comments there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. And who would like to answer that question? Could someone answer or comment on it?
It was a statement.
Oh, it's a statement. Never mind. You don't need to answer it. Okay.
Thank you.
Already activated. Is it my turn?
Hang on.
It is.
Are you ready? You're up, Councillor Pasici.
Through the deputy mayor. I'm actually through to Councillor Taylor. Thank you for bringing that up, because the electronic part was one of those things that in camera was really bugging me, because I agree with you. I don't think there's any way you can go in camera electronically. There's you could be in the basement of your house and your speakers are loud and your kids are listening to it and talking about it at the high school the next day. Like, to me, that's just not plausible. I don't think it would be fair to the discussions happening in camera. And I never thought about the working abroad and never missing a meeting, because the rules in the MJ, if you miss so many meetings, you are no longer on council. So maybe you could put a clause, and this is a question for that, is you could put a clause in there on the electric that after 2 electronic or whatever, you can only have so many before council would have to grant you special permission. Because right now, if you want to miss a certain amount of meetings, you would have to have council permission. So you should have council permission for electronic. We have had in the past where we've had some councillors they're going down south for a month or 2 because they were retired, and they would do that, and council would have to grant them the permission to go. Otherwise, they'd have to come to the meeting. So the same kind of rules should apply to the electronic meetings, because right now you could literally spend 6 months of the year in Arizona and be on council and to just zooming in. So to me, that's not fair to the community that people would do something like that. So I think I like those points, and the in-camera one was bugging me, and I actually forgot about it. So thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Did you want?
So yes,
Go ahead.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Pasici. Can I just clarify, when you say about 2 meetings or so, are you meaning consecutive meetings or 2 in a period of a year?
I don't know if I can get you read. Let's try it. And
Hit the down arrow. There it is. Now it's red. Can't wait till Ed's the deputy mayor.
I can trade you chairs over there, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry. So right now the MGA, I don't think you can miss. Is it 3 or 4 consecutive meetings in a row? Is it
I think
3?
it's-
Council meetings, not committee of the whole. So it should be somewhere along those lines, right? Like if you're 3 consecutive council meetings, like we just don't want. I think that I'm echoing what Councillor Taylor is saying is that we need to have some kind of a max. Like you have to have some kind of terms on it because really at the end of the day, you know, somebody could live here and work 7 months of the year offshore and. You know, sure, they're having their opinion added, but they're not in the community. They're not in the public's eye. They're not, you know, maybe readily available. So I'm not against having electronic calling because there's times when, you know, you probably don't want somebody in the chamber because they're sick or something. But I think we just have to have some kind of parameters. So. Right.
Thank you for the feedback.
Try.
You can activate her own.
Oh, you can activate it.
I
Go
think
ahead.
I have that power too. Councillor Precision, if I may, just thinking, and Councillor Taylor, just thinking about closed, if this sense is, and this is what this is about, feedback and providing and trying to get there, by not allowing a member to participate in closed in electronic means, I'm not sure that we can even do that. Or, you know, because essentially they're there to participate in the meeting. We'd have to look at that technically and figure out that piece.
I would like to talk to, so. Depends when he chooses.
locked in. This is great.
It was like that.
That, like Crystal, that's fine. Or I can, like, we're both on. But I was going to say, I know when people do exams, there's a procedure that they have to scan their room to show that there's nobody around them and stuff. And there is electronic devices for schools to make, they can actually know what your screens are doing as well. So they know if you're recording or not recording. So there is some technology out there that allows for some of that stuff. I'm sorry if I cut off.
Did you want to go? I like it better because you
Thank you
can
for that
control your own.
clarity, because understanding whether it's, you know, council wishes for it not to be a part of the electronic means, or if it's, you know, something we can figure out a workaround. But actually, you know, many exams, exactly, you have to show the room where you're at and who's around, so.
Okay, Councillor Chechka, we're going to try to get you up on here because we cut you off several times. Probably just. There we go.
Okay. All right, thanks through the Deputy Mayor to Council and Administration. Just in regards to the electronic method of attending council meetings, participation, I do agree with what Councillor Taylor and Position have mentioned regarding, you know, people living elsewhere and just kind of tuning in for the meetings. And I think some of the parameters might be best not just saying that if you miss 3 consecutive council meetings, but just like 3 in 1 year. Because you could, every 4th council meeting, you could physically attend still and be, you know, living in Fort McMurray, say, you know, just to kind of go off that example again, right? So I would prefer to see something like just, you know, 3 in a year, right? And up to a maximum per councillor, and that's, you figure it out, right? You know, and, you know, and then you don't attend, I guess, if you're, you know, not able to, right, as per the MJ as well. And then regarding the in-camera, so yeah, there are some methods to, you know, lots of online invigilators have, you know, you scan the room, or just like wearing earbuds or headphones. So when you have earbuds and headphones on, nobody else can hear the conversation as well. So I know whenever we attended during COVID, I tried to use those as best I could because the speakers on them are better than, you know, listening to it through the iPad anyways. So, you know, using earbuds are also another way to, you know, have that conversation be secure, even if the doors close and the windows are closed. You know, I get that, you know, some walls are, you can hear through them. So those are kind of my comments with that, my input. Otherwise, I like the conversation I heard.
Okay, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, with the electronic meetings and that, I know with closed session here, previous council was on, stuff like that. I know we had a councillor that, or councillors would go down south. They would go miss the first meeting. And they wouldn't miss council, committee of the whole, they missed the second council meeting, they would fly back, hit that one meeting, go back down again for another month. And that didn't work. That bothered me something terrible. I mean, you spend 2 months there in a nice warm climate up here, and you're not doing your job up here and that. I also sat on the board here, previous board then, that when we went to a closed session and we had quorum, they asked that you did not participate in it because they could not guarantee that nobody else was in the room. You can put your earbuds in if you want and that, but how do you know that the earbuds are working, that they just got earbuds in and that, eh? So we were asked to please, phone back in or Zoom back in or whatever it was with that. And nobody complained about it. They all agreed that there was some, very stuff out that the public didn't need to know unless when it was passed, they went out to the public and shared it or to the media and that. So it's, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bevins. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor, changing gears yet again, just going to section 12.4 of the public hearing section. I like that we solidified times and things like that in terms of submissions, that it's that you can take it up, 4 o'clock from the Thursday prior, and that'll be included in the agenda package. And then we could take it up to 12 p.m. on the day of the public hearing.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor, it's 12 p.m. the day before.
Day before, okay.
Yes, sorry.
So then, will those be included in the agenda package, or how will the public see those submissions?
Thank you. So they will not be included in the agenda package, but they would be included in the agenda minutes.
Okay,
And then council will receive copies of them prior to the council meeting.
all right, thank you, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Persicny.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor to Ms. Fearbum. Will that eliminate that problem we had the last public hearing where we had it submitted and then had to have it read to us as well? Because that was really annoying.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Persicny, yes, that will. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Taylor, lead us on to the next one.
Okay, yeah, I'll have a few comments throughout, but I'll always pause for other comments as well. Ms. Fearbum, through the chair to Ms. Fearbum, you mentioned about the difference between a presentation and a delegation. And so a delegation, you're saying, is like a stars coming, thanking us for our contributions, and that a presentation is something like we saw tonight. Is that correct? No,
Sorry.
opposite. No. All right.
Through the Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Taylor. So just flip that. So a delegation would be a member of the public like we had tonight coming to ask a question, or if we had a sports team wanting to come in and say, thank you for supporting us, a real quick item. A presentation would be something like STARS, where they come in and present their annual update, or Youth Council comes in and presents their annual update. Library Board wants to come and do an update on their yearly things, or if you have the committees that the councillors sit on want to come and do an annual update, that would be done as a presentation. That would likely take over the 5 minutes or the recommended 3 minutes to go forward.
And is there, I'm sorry if I missed it within the bylaw, is there a time limit to a presentation?
Thank you. So I did not build one in, but I'm definitely open to an option for that.
I would.
If council would like that.
I throw out the number of 15 minutes with a caveat of listening to other members of council to say that, but I don't know what a average number would be, and I guess it would be certainly up to the chair to see if it needed to be extended. Maybe 10 minutes. I can't remember what legal counsel had said, if they had a recommendation to that, but I'm certainly open to other recommendations if other councillors have timeframes for that, so.
If I may,
go ahead.
in my research that I did prior to this, the presentations that we had that were longer were anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes. So if you live in that time frame, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Persicny.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Taylor and Ms. Fearbum. If I remember correctly, the discussion was, because, and correct me if I'm wrong in this situation, that we don't because they're not under delegations where you have time limits, they would submit what their presentation time limit is. Right, so they submit, where STARS is a good example because they could do an annual presentation. They say, our presentation is 22 minutes and here's our slide deck and here's how it's gonna go. And then we would put it into our agenda, right? Because then they would actually be under an agenda item. So then you'd be moving it for information or whatever the case would be. Because that was the recommendation where your delegation was supposed to be, like this, even the one tonight, we could have had, that could have been a presentation as well. That way they have the time to speak that they're required. And then the chair could also say, okay, well, you're repeating yourselves and we can end a conversation now, but you have it where you don't have to be governed by any time limits, right? You could have the seniors bus coming in and they are going to they have a 45-minute presentation and they submit that, we know that. So then when you're building the agenda, they go, okay, maybe that's too much. But it's just that way you're not governed by why you can only go 25 minutes. You want your delegations at a quick moment because it's just a quick in and out.
Any more, Councillor Taylor, you're putting us lead. Do you have any more leads for us if no one else has a question?
And you're getting really good at clicking the thing. Really good. Good job, Deputy Mayor. Question on 17.3 under meeting conduct. Unless permitted by the chair, no member may speak for longer than 5 consecutive minutes or speak more than twice on any motion. Was that something that was in the old procedure bylaw? I've never. It was okay. So Councillor Chechka is saying that it was. And what's the? I guess I struggle with this one too, and a good chair will allow that discussion to take place. I would hate to see someone being cut off because, you've only spoken twice, because sometimes discussion elements do end up occurring more throughout. One member may say something and then, that spurs a question from somebody else. So I guess a good chair will allow that, but.
I was giving you an example of how you can be cut off. So a good chair can cut you off, and you spoke twice. Councillor Chechka, you're up.
Thanks. Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Taylor. So it does say unless permitted by the chair. So our chairs have normally permitted that to happen. And on occasion, the chair has said, okay, when the councillor wants to say something, they say, do you have anything new to add? And that's kind of their method of saying, like, okay, like, are you repeating yourself, or you've spoken a few times, or how's that going? So we already do implement that at certain moments.
Okay, does any other councils have that? I was just giving Councillor Taylor a demonstration that we do have power to X you out. I found the button.
He didn't stop talking, no?
Well, no one can hear him.
The cameras don't talk to you and the speakers don't work.
Does any other councillors have anything? I mean, there was lots on here and the slides went through, so I don't see any mics on. Do you have the information you required? Do you have enough feedback?
Thank you. Yes, I do.
Okay, so
Deputy Mayor Chenard, I'm going back to the missing meetings. Because there was a sense, and this is what we're trying to do here, is essentially just to have a really good understanding of what what council would appreciate when we bring this forward again. Because there was a discussion about 3 consecutive meetings, and then there was a discussion about 3 meetings a year. Those are 2 very different things that we'd be writing into this bylaw. So I just would like some more further discussion on this item.
Councillor Taylor, I believe you're up. Oh, that's at the arrow.
Oh.
Yeah.
You activated
You were
both
up
of us.
first. You were up first. You go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't know how we get 2 on, but go ahead, Councillor Position.
Through the chair to administration. Well, the MGA clearly identifies if you've missed meetings, so that's not something we need to put in our procedural bylaw. I think that's maybe my suggestion, maybe to follow what Councillor Chachka said, was maybe we need to look at how many times you can come in electronically, or how many times in a row you can come in electronically, along those lines, as opposed to how many you can miss. The miss is outlined in the MGA. We can't change that. That's essentially law. That's legislation. So really, it's what do we feel as a council is acceptable. And to me, I don't know, if 3 years, like, I mean, you don't ever want to have you don't know what the future holds. I think maybe you should have, after 2 consecutive, let's say 2 or 3, you have to have council permission to have any more, right? Because what if somebody had a really bad injury and they're stuck in the Glenrose, right? Then they still want to partake and they still want to be a part of their community, and they're hung up and they can't come to town. You know what I'm saying? There could be really extreme circumstances, and that's where council could maybe grant that permission. But maybe it's too many terms before you have to ask council for permission to continue to electronically come in, and that way it's up to council. That doesn't tie anybody's hands, and the missing the meetings is already legislated, so that's moot. So.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree with Councillor Pasicci's comments there about structuring that. And if that's good with that discussion, I just have one more comment to make. Just under agendas, 23.1, meeting agendas be prepared on the direction of CAO in consultation with the mayor. 23.2, once an agenda has been published, no items can be added unless approved by the CAO. I always feel like the mayor should be involved in that process as well. The mayor has one vote within this process, but I always feel the mayor also sets the agenda for the council meeting as well. So obviously the CEO needs to be involved because there's obviously administrative work or preparation that needs to be prepared. But if a member wants to add something to the agenda, I'm not saying that our CAO would ever deny that. I'm just thinking of future in terms of that I believe that the mayor, the elected member of the mayor, should be involved in that process as well. So that's my thoughts on that. So,
Councillor Chechka, where I accidentally cut you off. No? Oh, it was Councillor Taylor I cut off. Is there any more questions from Committee of the Whole? I think we have our directions. I'm just going to chime in exactly where we said the MGA sets missing meetings, but I do like the thought because Councillor Pasicci did said, what if it's an unusual circumstance to the individual? They're not working somewhere away, but unusual. So as long as council has that. Go ahead, Christine.
So council, just to be clear, missing meetings, because if you're allowing for electronic means, they're in attendance. Essentially, that's what you're allowing for. So the use of the word of missing meetings, they're not actually missing just because they're not present. They're still participating in the meetings. That is what you would be allowing for, this is just bringing this in line. As everyone remembers, during COVID, we had the meeting regulation that allowed for us to participate in electronic means, and we have not. This is bringing this bylaw up to the current day standard. So.
Councillor Pasicci.
Yeah, through the chair. We understand that you're still timing in, but if you can only go to 2 electronic meetings, then at some point you're going to miss enough meetings, and that may be a problem without council permission, which is the same thing with missing meetings. You need council permission. So it's just allow for 2 or 3, and after that, you need permission for more. Because somebody, it's like maybe like further, if I may further chair what Mr. Councillor Bevan said, is you could have that person that's just hitting those timelines online. Oh, I get 2, I reset it 2. Maybe it should be an annual thing, you X amount of per year, and after that you'll require special permission. That way if you have an absentee counselor, then you don't have to worry about you can let the laws take play.
Okay, I believe unless anyone else has a question, you have the information required then?
Thank you. So Councilor Pasicci, just to, and to the rest of committee, just to clarify, the approximately 3 consecutive within a year's time frame, is that something that is appealing? Or do you mean 3 total within the 4-year term?
Councillor Chechka.
Get through the chair to Ms. Verboom. My interpretation would be that would be like 3 per calendar year.
Thank you. And that's, yep. Thank
Okay,
you.
I think if we have all the information, it is going to hold, so we bring stuff back, but we do appreciate that. So we would be moving on to, okay, we're going to move on to E3, draft development Authority bylaw 2302. And that would be Christine Beveridge is presenting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chenard. This item is essentially a housekeeping item. As per our discussions with regards to the land use bylaw and through many of our processes and updating our bylaws, the next two items are simply that, essentially allowing for bylaws that are outdated and not current practice anymore. So this item in particular, the Development Authority bylaw, is essentially the bylaw that authorizes the authorization for the functions of the Development Authority for the town of Edson. Essentially, what we're asking for is for consideration for to be follow practice of municipalities at this in this current day, and urban municipalities as well. As far as the Development Authority is typically assigned to development officer and that planning function. In the past, just what this allows for in the way that we've written the bylaw is that we've also added a couple more positions, and what that does is added coverage. That's important. We don't have redundancy within this organization, and we want to make sure that if a development permit needs to be issued, that it can be issued, and we're not holding things up. And that we've heard the council loud and clear with regards to moving things along with regards to our red tape and our reduction in doing so. So essentially, that is essentially what this item is allows for the authority to be granted.
Okay, I believe all, excuse me, all the council members have read the agenda. Do we have any clarification questions on this? Not, then we will move on to 2303, the draft subdivision authority, and I believe you are presenting as well, correct? Yes.
Thank you very much. This item, the subdivision authority bylaw, previously council was actually the authority for, or in the current state, council is the authority for the subdivision approvals. And moving through, again, this is an item for urban municipalities. It's a typical process for the CAO to be designated this power. Essentially, then it's delegated out. One of the key components with regards to this bylaw, and one that we see as advantageous as well, is that if council is the subdivision authority, you're not able to actually appeal or challenge that. Being the approving authority, you're not able to do so. So, if there's those situations, it's fairly confined as far as it's the applicant, the government department, and the council or the affected school board. So it is fairly refined, and we wanted to allow for opportunity if council, for whatever reason, does not agree with a subdivision approval that has been provided, council has that opportunity. That really is just essentially also it just provides a clean process. Thank you.
Okay, I believe this is the same thing, information. Councillor Chechka, you have a question?
Thanks. Through the Deputy Mayor to CAO Beveridge. So I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around a few that we've had brought forward to us. Some of them have had public hearings, but that was only because it was changing the land use, I believe. So those have come forward. Sorry, thank you, redistricting it. And so, and others have had maybe, I guess, future financial obligations tied to it. Maybe not at that moment. Can you just explain that process a little bit? That if there, say we needed like a major water upgrade or like a 3-mile long pipe out to this new subdivision, that, like if they're not right near or we don't have utilities right there or that are functional, I'm just wondering about the financial implication of that, if there is one, or if that's like a few more steps down the road.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Chachka. The intricate details with regards to that component, essentially, when there are financial implications for the municipality, we're still able to bring that forward as far as, the town, the impact in approving a subdivision application and the key conditions that are approved within that, ensuring that there's adequate infrastructure, et cetera, is all a part of that process. But there's opportunity.
Councillor Persicny.
Yeah, through the chair to Ms. Beveridge. How come I thought the MGA stated that only council could subdivide lands except for the queen or the king now? So I'm just like, that's like basically a town manager or a CAO could take an entire neighborhood and subdivide it all up, and then council doesn't know anything about it. I feel like I'm having some confusion on this one.
Go ahead.
Through to Councillor Persicny. So the MGA does not require that council be the subdivision authority, that there is a subdivision authority that it's authorized to. So I'm not certain on that. That's a great Clayton question. As I've mentioned, also Clayton was supposed to be presenting these items. I don't know that intricate detail, but I can look into that, and when we bring that back, we can provide that detail.
Okay, I believe, yeah, so thank you, it's a housekeeping. Any other questions, concerns on 2303? If not, thank you very much, and we'll move on to E4, Extreme Cold Emergency Warming Centers, and that is presented by, whoops, oh, it's gone. Tanya Byers. Welcome up.
Okay. I have zero control of your Okay. So good evening, Deputy Mayor, Council and Administration. It's my pleasure to be in front of you tonight to just give a bit of an update, I guess, and presentation on the Emergency Warming Center project that we implemented over the past winter. Okay, this should be so easy, but it's not. Click on what? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we just had a few objectives that I think were quite clear from council when we had met in December. And so as we know, that we have an unhoused population who are at risk during the cold winter months, especially during extreme cold of when it's minus 25, which is where the threshold was set by council. On December 12th, the Extreme Cold Weather Emergency Warming Center protocol was adopted by council, taking into account the concerns of council and the public. And the warming center was operational December 19th of 2023. The facility would not function as a shelter and was in no way intended to replace the shelter pods or function in a similar manner. The warming center was to operate as an emergency, temporary supervised space with security measures in place to monitor its usage, and was only available in the evenings when the temperature reached the protocol threshold of minus 25 Celsius. So this is just a picture. I'm sure you all had the ability to see it when it was actually functional and in place. But as you can see, we had the 2 warming trailers, and that was just to provide a little extra room, depending, as we didn't know how many individuals to expect. We had the 1 generator that was able to power and heat both of the trailers. And then we had equipment, IT equipment on site for monitoring purposes, and 2 portable washrooms, waste bins, lockers, and fencing. And just so you're aware that the fence was closed and locked every night after use. So the collaborating departments, corporate services, which included our facilities, maintenance, IT, occupational health and safety, and communications, played a very large role, as you'll see in the next slide. Infrastructure and operations, with our utilities, public works, and park staff contributing, and then also with community and protective services. Enforcement had a fairly large role as well, and fire and FCSS probably more on the administrative side of things. And so these are the contributions. It was a total of 194 hours for corporate services. And I'm just going to mention with building maintenance in there, they were responsible for opening and closing They would come to the facility, they would fuel up the generator, get them warming, and then also, shut it down at the end of the shift. And they also, IT was a big part of this, the surveillance, and with this new technology that we were using, we had some challenges, and so there were frequent visits to take it down, fix it up, and that sort of thing. So that's why corporate services had quite extensive time put in. Community and protective services, we logged approximately 128 hours, infrastructure and operations approximately 30 hours. Now, this is the expense summary for the entire project. And then, of course, this doesn't include the town staffing costs. This is just the direct cost that we incurred. And so the surveillance cameras were just around 1,400. Generator was, as you can see, a fairly large expense in this with just about 17,000. Small supplies and incidentals, just some minor things like locks and keys and that sort of thing. Security services was significant amount, just over 50% of the budget. And trailer rental was around 7,000. Portable washrooms, which were provided locally by a contractor, were just over 1,300. And our cleaning was kindly donated by a local cleaning company. So total costs ended up being just over $53,000 for the time that the facility was open. Nights per month, which met the threshold. As you can see on here, January, we had, I guess, the most nights that it was open, with it being 13, with a total of 26 nights that it was actually open between the December and April when it was demobilized. And so we had 63 visitors over the 25 nights. And when we say 63, that they were not unique, like they're 63 times individuals used the resource. So in January, we were open for 13 nights and we experienced 24 visitors. February, 6 nights and 10 visitors, and March was 7 nights, and you see the increase to 29 visitors. We did ask the individuals that are part of the homelessness task force why we might have seen this large increase, I guess, with the lower amount of nights. And it's suspected that maybe some of the parameters changed at the mission as to who was able to stay and whatnot. So with some of those changes, we're thinking that may have been why we had more individuals joining us in March. So when I say what we heard, this is really, we were gleaning our information from the task force, which has several agencies sitting at the table. There are individuals who feel that the -25 with the wind chill is too cold, and that maybe we should be considering lowering that trigger. We also have, schedule in mind. Some would like to see the trailers open all day when the temperatures are so low, because it's, difficult to get from point A to point B, even if there is another facility that's open. Surveillance, we understand that some individuals chose not to use it because they didn't like that there was security and surveillance on site. And, comfort, obviously, with the parameters that we had set, and just to be in alignment with fire codes and that sort of thing. We weren't able to provide mats or blankets or any of those sort of things. It was simply a place to go and stay warm. And so, chairs being not that comfortable to go and spend the night, but that is what was offered. And I think overall, and we actually had a really good discussion today, and Councillor Taylor might want to add to this. We had a really good discussion with the task force today, and I think overall we can say that this was really quite a success in terms of how it rolled out, how it worked every night. We essentially had no incidents there, like there were no safety concerns. The security worked very well. We got good reports from them every morning. And several people used it, and hopefully we prevented some, I guess life-threatening situations or injuries due to cold. So I think, and the RCMP in particular said that they felt that the model that we used, that it was very successful, and if we aren't able, if nothing else is in place for the fall, that they would like to see, the same project, I guess, take place for the next winter. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor, you have questions? Councillor Moore, you're up.
Through the chair, to Tanya. So they weren't allowed to sleep in there, but just a scenario here, what if somebody was falling asleep in their chair? Would they be nudged and say, you can't sleep here? How did that work out?
Through the chair to Councillor Moore, there definitely were circumstances where that was occurring, and security was, I guess, requesting our suggestions on how do we deal with this sort of thing, and our suggestion was that if they were nodding off and not causing any trouble and there was no health risks and such, to just allow them to nod off.
Thank you. Thank you. Moore, Councillor Taylor, you're up.
I think Mr. Wagstaff has something to add. So.
A bit of supplemental to that as well. There were wellness checks. Our security did wellness checks on anyone who was there over the night. So if they had been asleep and they were in the chair, and as Tanya had shared, if there wasn't any issues, then they just did a wellness check on them, but then they would leave them be.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Taylor, you're up.
Yeah, through the chair to council administration, thank you, Ms. Byers, for bringing this forward and bringing it forward in June, so we could discuss it now over the summer and not be sort of caught in the wintertime. So we can discuss it and move forward if this is something we want to move forward with. The first thing I want to bring up is obviously the cost is $53,000. A lot of people will see that as $53,000 as being, a lot of money. We did have it in our budget. I think we had $64,000 that we had within some funds used for, I think it was shelter pods that we had moved over to cover this. But I want to just stress that we had $53,000, 63 individuals who did not need medical assistance in the times that it got extremely cold. And like, what number do you put, and we talked about this months ago, what number do you put on a person's life? Well, at the end of the day, these people are alive and they're safe. And so we heard it tonight at our homelessness task force. Ms. Byers mentioned it, and I'll repeat it again. This is straight from Staff Sergeant Delisle. He said this, you could take this to tonight, that the RCMP appreciated the warming center. It kept people alive. It reduced the amount of, drastically reduced the amount of calls that they would have received on any nights like that, where unhoused individuals were looking at shelter or starting fires or those types of things, and no one got hurt. And I think when I spoke about this months ago, that is the number one direction of this policy, is that no one gets hurt, no one dies, and so there's tremendous success there. To talk about the 4 items within that, the 4 concerns that were brought up. The temperature, this is the biggest struggle. I think there's always going to be a struggle in terms of temperature. There were certainly some individuals said minus 20. I've heard minus 20. I know it was set at minus 25. I think I'd be okay with minus 25. I know this is a debatable topic to hear, but you have to draw the line in the sand somewhere, and that's my thoughts on that. I know there was unhoused individuals or certain individuals that had problems with surveillance. I'm sorry, we need to have security on site. Security is paramount for everyone's safety, for the safety of our staff, for the safety of the community, and for the safety of the people using the facility. If individuals don't want to use it because we have surveillance, so be it. Sorry, we need surveillance. Comfort, these are not made for comfort. This is just made to keep people alive. Chairs in there is fine. This was a warming center, period. I think we've seen maybe in other municipalities where they try to say, well, maybe we could have beds and maybe we could do other things like that. And it cascades into something that our municipality isn't prepared to do, isn't qualified to do either. So I think just keeping it simple and chairs in there is fine. The biggest challenge, I think, is with the scheduling. We were fortunate enough to have another organization or other organizations open during the winter, that when 8 a.m. came, the unhoused individuals could leave the warming center and go somewhere else during the day. The challenge is, if those organizations aren't running, where do they go? And it's still minus 25 or colder during the day. And yes, this past winter, we did have days where it was minus 30 all day. So I would look at, if there is no other organizations in town, we may need to address keeping it open during the day. I know that's an additional cost, but again, the other side of that coin is people are going to get hurt. And we just cannot have that in our community. The number one policy that we have with this is to keep people safe. So I know that we put that as a contingency in there in case those other organizations aren't up and running. So again, I'll repeat again, the RCMP and the Homelessness Task Force was very much in favor and look at the warming center as a huge success.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Prasichny, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to administration. Thank you for the report. I think to point out a couple of glaring things that are missing in this report. One, you talk about hours, it's just misleading. So that could be anywhere between $9,000 and $15,000 extra in staff hours that added to this. So then we take that and for 3 months, because we didn't have this open very long, and let's be honest, that was a very mild winter. The days it was open, if you broke down the dollars at just our external cost, was $2,000 per night. $2,000. That doesn't include the daily costs. If you broke it down every day it was open, it's $333 a day external costs. That is only from December the 27th to the end of April. Does not include November, December, which everybody at this table knows in Edson, Alberta, Canada, you can get minus 25 easily at the end of October and November. So moving forward, we have to take that in consideration, what our true costs are going to be. And I would really like on these reports to have a breakdown of what staff, because based on the wages in our community, we're unionized, and I know that we had managers going and doing things, and some of our higher paid. So those costs are going to anywhere from $9,000 to $15,000 easy in labor over 3 months. So before we look at this, and you got to look at the big number over how many more months, because all those costs are going to go up. And if we have a really bad winter, great, yeah, you're helping people, and I get that, and I understand that, but those costs go even higher because you got security there longer. If we extend it to 24 hours a day, those costs go even higher. Next thing you know, we're facing a $300,000 or $400,000 bill for, I don't know how many individuals. There's 63 visits. That's a lot of hotel rooms. I'm just saying, like, really, put them in a hotel room. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that this was, we missed the gun because we were late. We were lucked out because we had an incredibly mild winter, but it's expensive, and it's really expensive. Now, you know, we need to, if this is a provincial-wide problem, everybody's facing the same problem, and I don't know what the solution is, but we need some provincial help if we're going to run this kind of a shelter for an entire winter. Because this is going to cost real cost, and hiding the 360 hours, and I know you can't break it out because there's so many people attached to it, but I just went from $25 to $45, and that's $9,000 to $15,000, and that's the range that it costs us in staffing for 3 months. So I think we need to look at this one, and it's good that we're looking at it now, but we need to have a real idea. If we open this thing on October the 31st. And we run this thing until the end of March, and let's say a really bad winter, what can be in Edson, what's that going to cost us? Because our costs go way through the roof when it's running, because you have those security guards on site. And I would echo Councillor Taylor's point on the surveillance. Well, sorry, then don't sleep in the shelter. It's simple. And the temperature, it's a gray area. I mean, it's wind chill, so it's only minus 15 outside, but the wind chill brings it to 25. It's open, so I think it's all cold, but really, I would really like to know before we look at this winter, what our real end costs could be. Because right now we're told $53,000, those are just external costs. Those are just where we wrote a check to a company. Doesn't include the wages, the staff time, the staff having to go down there, staff having to go there in the morning and lock it up. And you're juggling staff. So there's scheduling costs, and 360 hours may even be light on what it actually costs the staff. So, and the numbers I'm using are just if you had those wages, doesn't include the back end costs of those wages, which is your benefits and pensions and all the other things that cost the municipality. So you could easily arguably say it's $15,000. So anyway, that's my financial rant.
Thank you, Councillor Prasichny. Tell us how you really feel. Councillor Chechka.
Thanks. Thanks. Through the Deputy Mayor to Council and Admin. Thanks again for bringing this forward in June. I do have a couple of questions. First off, as Councillor Position mentioned, we started this in December last year. Does administration have a plan for what month that it would be intended on starting going forward? And as well as, is there another organization doing a MAP program? I'm not sure if we know anything about that as well, because I know that if there's another organization doing a MAP program, that might change some perspectives at the table as well. So, and then another question on provincial funding. We've had been alluded that there's oodles of money out there, kind of, under really certain conditions, if there's any way to access that for this or another agency, just how do we access that money? As this is a provincial responsibility as well, which often gets dropped down to the municipality.
Okay, one you want to answer? Go ahead, please. Yep.
Through the chair to all of council. On each of those questions, I'll just go through them. So the plan is that's what we will be bringing back on July 16th to Councillor Kasichny's comments. Those are the types of things that we want to have planned out and look at the different scenarios as to what are the costs, what are the resources required that are both direct cost and indirect costs for each of those types of scenarios. How many days would it run, that kind of thing. So that's what we intend to bring back following this meeting after we heard the impact from council of what that might be. And included in that was how the provincial funding, what sources are there out there, and what are the parameters to be able to access that funding. Again, this particular type of program that's a warming center, not a shelter, does not qualify for the provincial funding that we looked at last year. We'll reaffirm that's the case and look at some other potential funding sources that we are aware of and see whether it might fit with what we're doing. And the last part with regards to what else is out there within the community, to date, there hasn't been anything confirmed that it'll be operable in the fall and winter. There is one organization within the community that is looking at attempting to have something in place of a MAT type program. We have reached out to them just to see where they're at on that, but at this point in time, that is not confirmed to be operational.
Oops, Councillor Taylor, you're up next.
Yeah, through the chair. First off, to Councillor Positiony's point, I know you talk about, you just mentioned hotel rooms. I'm not saying that you're coming up with the idea, although the idea has been floated around, and the recommendation from the RCMP is don't do it. We even look at going back to the shelter pods. The shelter pods had things in them. Unfortunately, some of the unhoused individuals took it upon themselves to really strip the places down. That's why I think when look at the warming center is really just a trailer and chairs. That's it. No blankets, just heat, stay warm. If you're not off and you fall asleep, fine, at least you're safe. So that was the point of that. In terms of provincial help, Mr. Wagstaff talked a little bit about that. Essentially, the provincial help they're looking for, the way I understand it, is programs that are more 24/7, that are probably beyond the scope of being run by our municipality. They would have to be run probably by a third-party agency of some kind. The Homelessness Task Force is still in the stages of setting itself up, and how the Homelessness Task Force can access funding, but the group also hasn't committed to creating or doing anything in the future. So certainly I can't speak on that agency taking anything on, or I will say this, in a perfect world, an outside agency would be able to set up something using provincial funding that's out there in a 24/7 model to help our unhoused individuals, which would make the warming center completely up. We would be able to take that off the books. We wouldn't need that. That's in its perfect world. Right now, there's no agency yet, to my mind, that's ready to take that on. And that, I think, is the point of this policy is in case we don't have those agencies, we need to have something in place. Unfortunately, no matter what the cost, and that is the unfortunate part of it. We're trying to assist. I could say that administration is trying to assist the homelessness task force to get to a good point, to perhaps go down that road if they wish to, but we're not there yet.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pisichny, you're up.
So I think I have a two-part question. So my first question is through to Mr. Wagstaff. Then it refers back to Councillor Chachka's comment of the MAP program. If you see they're not unready, is there a possibility that we could look at redirect, then they need funds? Is this an area where we give them a grant and it goes 10 times farther than we could push the grant? If it's the facility, I think it is, they're 24/7. Can we help them get a provincial grant? Are those options that are there? That's a question. So maybe if it's possible when you're bringing this back, bring back the option of that place and see if we can help them, if that is a possibility, because I'd like to know that is there. And then my question goes through to Councillor Taylor on that committee. Is that committee working with that organization? It's an organization in the community. You have a committee. Are you working with that group?
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the chair to Councillor Pisichny, I believe that no one from that agency attends our homelessness task force meetings.
Go ahead. Mr. Wagstaff.
In any group that's also applying for the provincial funding with regards to homelessness and shelters, they do require a letter of support from the town. So if they are applying, that is something that they will be reaching out to the town for. Again, that is a group that we have been in contact with, and we're going to continue to gauge where they're at and what assistance we could provide if they need any.
Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Taylor. So they haven't reached out to you. Has that organization reached out to them?
Councillor Taylor.
To my knowledge, I do need direction from our chair of the task force, Ms. Cahola. They are included in messages out. Yes, they are included and can attend our meetings. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Okay, if there's any, I'll just chime in too. I have to agree with Councillor Pisichny. I am very pleased we're talking about it now. It gives us time, and I'd be interested in the cost of it as well. Like what it actually daily costs, because we were lucky it was 3 months, but I'm echoing in the room, hearing the comments. I like the idea, if we're gonna spend the money, for this, if the other group does come forward, can we help them? And instead of putting the fixed number, could climb to 200,000-300,000, who knows, but if we can help them, that would work. The other question is, if we are to move forward them, have we looked at purchasing? Because I'm looking at the rental price for 16,000 for generators, and I go to auction sales, I can buy them for $1,000. As same with the trailers, because we directed one time airport to go out and gonna buy 3, and they paid $700 and they got the item. So I would like to look at that. The trailers understand, but the generators, they shouldn't damage them. So just my comment. Go ahead, Christine.
Deputy Mayor, I do request to speak. Just with regards to purchasing, and Mr. Wagstaff may be able to supplement, but just understanding that this was a temporary solution in place of having something else set up by another organization. And that's really the model that administration was following.
Thank you for your clarification. I understand it's temporary, but I mean, like I just looked at rent, we could have bought them and sold them again, but that's nevertheless, it's dollar figures. Does anyone else have any comments on this concern? And if not, thank you, Tanya Beyer, for bringing this forward. And it gives us lots of time to figure out the ifs and whens. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And then, emergency. Questions? I believe we're moving on. So, questions from media or public regarding tonight's meeting? Steve, anyone online? No? Anyone in the audience? Joanne, you have any questions? Oh, go ahead. Come up. State your name and go ahead.
Christy Gomolka. I am the chair of the Homelessness Task Force. I tried to stay quiet as much as I could, Councillor Pisicny. So my question is, because I know I need to ask a question, is based on the conversation around budgets and warming centers, because warming centers are extremely expensive and MAT programs have a very short lifespan. So we know those are two things that we know. Is it does council as a whole support moving in the direction of transitional housing? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question is because when I look at the shelter pods when they were open, and even although we don't know how many of those 63 people used the shelter or the warming center multiple times, people are using emergency shelter space as transitional housing. And so my point is that if we move people away from needing that really expensive emergency shelter space into much more affordable transitional housing, then we may not even have to have this discussion further on, because we might shrink that number of people who need emergency shelter to a very, very small number.
Actually, you brought up a good point. So administration can work with you. That's from looking at the time. So I think for my personal view, I want to see all the options and see costs. Like, I hear what you're saying, and if that works, it saves us money. So we could probably work with administration to work as a group to solve this problem. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair to Ms. Gomolka, thank you for the question. In terms of council leading the charge on this, and I spoke about this at the Homelessness Task Force meeting, I believe it is the municipality. This is my belief that it is the municipality's role to assist where the task force wishes to go. When the municipality begins to push it themselves, it becomes the responsibility of it, and that is really outside our wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. It really is. Obviously, we're doing a housing strategy this year, which the information from that can be beneficial. And to not forget, we do have the Rural Development Network report that was issued, I want to say last summer, maybe the summer before that, which we had that. And I think one of the recommendations in that was to look at transitional housing if that's where the task force wanted to go. So the task force is still in its infancy stages, right? And once we get rolling as to where the direction we want to go, and that's happening soon. I foresee something happening, making those decisions in the fall about if that's the direction we need to go, then I believe at that time, if that's the will of council, that council can assist with that process, but not lead it. I don't think that's the direction of certainly for me or what this council should be doing. And certainly I wouldn't want to put more on our administration that's certainly out of the wheelhouse of the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pisicny.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through to Ms. Gomolka. To answer your question, anytime somebody says something more affordable and better and a better solution, absolutely. Like to me, if we can come up with a better solution that doesn't break the bank, and maybe echo what Councillor Taylor said, municipalities leading these charges ends up generally being very expensive. But when you have other outside groups that come up with better solutions, that's why I asked the question about MAT programs and stuff. So sometimes we can give, you look at areas, we give money to the busing and how far it goes with what the money we give, and we give money to the food bank and what they can do with their programs and stuff. So if there's a way we can, sometimes not-for-profits and organizations have a way of taking $1 and turning it into 10. So absolutely, when it comes to saving money, I'm all about it. To me, it's just this program where you have a little snapshot from this winter, and it's an expensive snapshot, and it's not a true number snapshot. So and if you multiply that by a normal Edson winter, not one where we didn't have snow and it had sunny weather until December, that's unheard of. So yeah, absolutely. If we have a way of transitioning people and getting people off our streets, that'd be fantastic. I don't support programs that make other homeless people want to come to Edson to take advantage of programs, but we have our own people that are homeless in our community, and we need to solve that problem. And no municipality in North America, I know for sure, has the answers. But if it saves us money, that I'm all about it. That's, I guess, the premise of my point.
The premise of my question is that once you get onto that hamster wheel of emergency shelter, you're never going to get off of it. It becomes your focus, and then you don't look at the long-term solutions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's why I've never really been in favor of emergency shelters. They're incredibly expensive, and they're just a Band-Aid to say, okay, well now they're taken care of, and right now, that's why I'm hoping that our administration, this is committee of the whole, are listening that don't come back with the same problem, like the same thing. It seems very expensive. That system we had last year should really be our last resort. I'm sorry we haven't got a solution right now. This is a very temporary setup, and we're going to do it again because we don't have an option, but we're working on an option. To me, that's better than going, well, yeah, we did it last year, let's do it this year, and it's going to cost us, $300,000. I'm like, wow. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a hamster wheel, and it's that definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, it's not going to happen. So.
Thank you, Councillor Positioning. Councillor Moore.
Through the chair to Ms. Gamoka. For the uninitiated, what does transitional housing consist of? What are some forms of it?
So there's lots of models around transitional housing, but the models that most of the province is now using is usually like bachelor suites. They're like small apartments. They're usually temporary, just to move an individual, stabilize them, and then move them into more permanent housing. However, some individuals may be in there for a longer period of time, some for a shorter period of time based on what their needs are. And it usually includes a lot of supportive services around that. So you bring in your addictions counselors or your mental health counselors, and you bring in, food, whatever it looks like. And so it's all about stabilizing that individual so they can move past whatever has made them unhoused into a more permanent housing solution.
Could I ask a supplemental?
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Chair. The item on the agenda is questions from media and public. This is not a time to ask questions. We can do that at another time, or we can have a delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I was just about to cut them all off because you were out of order as well in yours. So, okay, thank you. Is there any more questions?
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. My name is Joanne Sobon. My question is, why would Council even entertain not allowing questions from the media and public when you have a very important discussion that just are questions that prompt people tonight, just from Ms. Gamoka, just tonight? Very important.
I can answer that one. Tonight is actually committee. So what we were stressing on the council meetings, we make decisions. So right now, a committee meeting where we're debating it, but we don't want to go that way. So the suggestion was brought forward by council. Other councils are doing that. So we've looked at other options, having more open houses instead of asking a question during, because even where you've seen this go around circles, we went off course. Mm-hmm. So that's why would be something considered
eliminating. But it brought something forward very, very important, like immediately, instead of going to public input a month or 2 months from now.
But it did bring it forward, so at committee of the whole, so what an example of this cutting it off. So where we bring that committee, we would announce we're having a public input meeting regarding this topic. So a lot of times we don't want to drag out our meetings, so we're not trying to discourage people from asking us questions. So, Councillor Persicny, I guess you have input to this.
Yeah, through the chair, so one. Part of this is even from discussions with you and your husband. I mean, we had several months ago, because it all blends together. But you guys come and your questions were, well, why don't you talk to us ahead of time? You guys don't talk to us ahead of time. You come to council, decision done. We don't get to ask a question until the end. And we're like, and so we take that information in, and so now the plan is what we'd like to do, and what I'd like to see is we have more meaningful, open discussions. So this is committee of the whole. This is where we're supposed to do our discussions. And when we go to council meeting, which is our formal council meeting, it's about making decisions. That's when you're making a decision. If it's controversial, we have a public hearing. People come, they speak to the public hearing, and then we make a decision. So the whole idea behind changing that and removing it is to have open and meaningful discussions before meetings. So that we're tasking and asking our administration to set that up so that we can have more engaged input from the public ahead of times. And a lot of it comes from what you guys said to us. You said, well, by the time we find out about it, it's at the council meeting and it's already decided and it's done. So we're trying to, instead of having the questions afterwards, we're trying to have the questions ahead of time.
So are you saying that at committee of the whole, questions will still be allowed, just not at the council meetings? Or am I misunderstanding that?
Okay, you could have misunderstood that. We're gonna check with, we brought it forward. We're gonna check with council and administration. So we have not clarified that tonight. It just come up in our conversation tonight. So nothing's written in stone. We're at committee. We will discuss it. So it's not in stone yet.
The engagement piece is to be more engaged in more public forums, in open houses, right? So it's easier to have discussions when you're not at a formal table.
Okay, so I don't know how to ask this as a question, but can you guys ask the public what they would like to see for that input? Not just sit and have administration and council decide that when it needs to be a venue that's comfortable for the public and meaningful to the public? So that those questions would need to be addressed to the public to find
Okay,
out.
so
I don't think I understand your question.
So you've asked administration to go back and to find out, we're gonna do more public input.
We're working on a procedural bylaw.
Okay, yeah.
And part of that is a plan to engage the community more and get the information out sooner so people can get more engaged earlier.
Okay, so what I'm asking
And
is,
the idea is we're cleaning up our agenda. So in our strategic planning session, when we had it's a lawyer and she does this for a living, a lot of the stuff we were doing is quite antiquated. And our agendas haven't changed since I was first elected, which is back in 2004. And they stem back to a very long time of just, we've been doing it all the way because that's just what we've always had. And the recommendations from that working group with her, it's very, very, very uncommon to have a questions and media line at the end of agendas. The county doesn't do it. There's a perfect example. Our closest neighbor doesn't do it. Most councils don't have it because it's not part of the procedure. By the time things hit council table, the people at the table are elected to make decisions on behalf of the community. So we want to get the information out early so the community can get voice their opinions to council. So we are cleaning up our agenda to streamline our meetings so that they're not lasting 4 hours and 3 hours and so forth. So that's the whole purpose of the procedure bylaw, to clean it up. They're cleaning up even wording in that procedure bylaw. It's a huge document of cleaning the bylaw up.
so the main thing that you're suggesting to get public input is by cleaning up the agenda. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's no.
what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this off. I think we're talking about something important.
I don't think it's time to cut it off.
But are we allowed to keep debating on this?
She's asking questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to Ms. Soban, to answer your question, that's where the public participation policy is going to come into play, which we're mandated to have by the MGA, right? And let's face it, I think COVID stifled, and I mentioned this tonight, COVID stifled our abilities to get out there and have public settings, as you mentioned, right? And then I think after COVID, we got into pretty bad groove. And one of the exciting things that I enjoy about being on council is having those sessions where you can meet the public and find out their concerns and hash things out with them outside of a formal setting before decisions are made, so we can bring those decisions to the table. And that then negates the ability to have questions at the end of the meeting, which are antiquated, old, and most councils don't do them anymore. So I believe that answers your question. When you ask the question about, are you going to ask us now? Yeah, that's part of it. That's the second part that we're going to look at is public participation. How creative can we be to get out there to meet the public? So that's what we're going to, that's the next step on what we're going to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Anything else? Okay, but it has to pertain to the meeting.
Oh, sorry, no.
It only pertains to what we discussed. Okay, if there's no other questions, I will look for an adjournment. Councillor Taylor.
I motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Thanks.